while I've always been the same person fundamentally, there was a lot of change that happened in those 4 years and growth that took place for me in each particular year of schooling that I went through at that school. And it kind of culminated in grade 12 as head boy of senior school, where I was kind of leading the school and trying to give back as much of that experience as possible and pass as many of the lessons that I had learned forward to others.
I'm Glenn Herbert, and I'm an editor with Our Kids. We're speaking with insiders from Canada's leading private schools to gain insights into their programs, culture, traditions, and leadership. This includes insights from parents, alumni, and administrators. This is the Our Kids Insider Perspective.
Culture and traditions that I think have an everlasting effect on the school and the kind of character it molds into their students. And so when I say traditions and stuff like that, it's not like we're doing things in the same way that people might have 200 years ago when they first started to attend Ravenscourt School or St. John's College. But I think there's a lot of principles that the school stands by, which have continued to have an impact on the life of students and have continued to guide those students in their paths through school. And so for me, whether that was the kind of messaging that was brought about striving to excel or rising to a challenge, or whether that was the teachers that I had who were always motivating and supporting me, people like Mr. Breeden, who really took me in when I was new and felt overwhelmed and out of place in a school where things seemed really challenging and everyone else was really smart, or if it were people like Mr. Grenell, who really taught me character and how to be a better person, or if it was people like Mr. Panis, who taught me how to fail and bounce back from situations which don't always seem the most ideal. Those were things that I think really had a developmental impact on me. So whether they were directly in line with my academic learning or not, it certainly helped shape me as a person. And I think at the time was very meaningful to me, and since leaving has become even more profound. I think if I were to try to define SGR, I would use the terms integrity, courage, and creativity. And when I say integrity, I think the school is really filled with people who care and care about each other. And in that sense, I mean teachers who care about students, but I also mean students who care about each other, and the families who become a part of SGR care about each other as well. And that becomes a very, very supportive, cohesive unit. While at the school, again, like teachers were nothing but supportive of me, which I could go on about forever, but my peer group has also been fantastic. I think you create bonds at SGR that last a very, very long time. Since leaving, I have stayed in touch with many people, and I continue to run into people all the time. I was at a Canadian national soccer game just the other day with a friend from SGR who I hadn't seen in years, and it was like we had only seen each other yesterday. So that was really nice. But likewise, you start to make connections with people further along the curve as well. For me, as someone studying finance and economics, a lot of doing well in my program is not necessarily being the smartest person all of the time, because at a certain point, everyone is pretty qualified and everyone has a great resume or a GPA. A lot of it is just chance and being in the right place at the right time. And so something that I was very surprised about when I moved to Toronto was how willing SGR alumni in the community were to help me out and lend a helping hand and sort of provide me with exposure to an industry that I knew nothing about coming in. That is true about SGR alumni in Toronto. It's also true about alumni in New York, in San Francisco, in Calgary, and in Vancouver. I've talked to countless people across North America, I guess. And that has just been unreal for me to really experience and invaluable overall. I also think, the families become very close. And so both inside and outside of classrooms, you have a lot of connection there as well. And I think when I think back to my friendships, like I would say, my mother might be a closer friend with the mother of one of my friends than I am with him. And that is not to say that I'm not a good friend with him. It's just a testament, I think, to how the school really brings people together. And it really does so in such a way that everyone is there for each other as well. The school, as much as I said, leans on a lot of principles and tradition, it is always evolving. I found the school to be one which is constantly looking for ways to improve and to innovate and to become more advanced and more cutting edge with everything it does, whether that is the facilities that were in constant renovation and updating, which are beautiful. And I think second to none in Winnipeg, certainly, and I think across the country as well. But also in terms of the type of academic resources that are used and implemented, both in like a tech setting with how that is starting to change, but also the kind of thinking that is used by teachers. There's a lot about like design thinking or reconciliation-based knowledge or less kind of stereotypical schooling that was really pushed forward to make sure that we were trying new things and trying to get students to think rather than just absorb. And so I found if I were to define SGR or think of it as a person, it would be someone who was constantly exploring the unknown, who was always doing so with excitement and with energy and with passion, and trying to take that on so that it can lead the way into the future. This says a lot, I guess, about my experience in other schools as well. Either before SGR and after leaving, I've really come to realize and not take for granted the type of circle that I was in and just how special I think it really was. First and foremost, they're all very good people. We only had a class of 100 or so in my graduating year. And so everybody knew everyone and we were very close, whether we were personal best friends or not. Everyone sort of looked out for one another and kind of knew what we were all up to, and just happy to see everyone do well. And I think that was really important because at the same note, we were also all very driven. We were all very intellectually curious, I guess you could say. And we're all very intent on pursuing our passions and felt the belief in ourselves that we could do such a thing. So I found that to be quite common. I thought, people never shied away from, taking on something new. People were always looking for opportunities to grow and were never really content with just settling with what they had. And SGR was a place which, if you seeked out further opportunity, you were always going to be able to find it. And I thought that was really, really important because it enabled you to continue to grow on a continuous basis if that was what you wanted. And I think many of my peers did. The one thing that really stood out was perseverance, in that things may not always be going fantastically for you. But what matters there is how you respond to adversity and how you respond to difficulty to enable yourself to overcome whatever stands in your way. And I think that was really, really crucial to my learning. It certainly was for my personal experience. Obviously, I did a lot at SGR. I was very involved. I had a lot of success in a lot of different fields, but it was not always easy. And I think SGR tries to let people know that that's okay, and that there will be times when you stumble. There will be times when things aren't always going your way. And there will be times when you're not the smartest or most capable person in the room. And that's okay, so long as you are conscious of the fact that you can still make a difference in such situations and can still respond to them in a way which will, move you forward in a marginal step regardless. And that marginal step really means something and can make a really, really big difference in the long run, and will certainly add up when others are not necessarily capable or willing to take that challenge or to take that next step when it seems hard to do so. So for me, that was something that I always had in mind. It was something that I think always inspired me to continue pushing on. And I think it's a lesson that will stay with me for many, many years to come. Yeah, I think in Winnipeg, there might be a lot of stereotypes about what SGR is, as this big institutional private school that's been around for a very long time and is in a tucked away part of the city. So a lot of people might not know very much about it. And that certainly was the case for me. When I started in grade 9, I didn't really know what I was getting myself into. I was concerned that I would potentially be in a place with a lot of rich kids who were maybe not the kindest, or maybe not the most welcoming, or that it might have been a very homogenous kind of demographic, which may have come from a very different background than myself. But I realized very quickly that that was not true at all. When I arrived, I found it to be incredibly diverse, both in demographic, in character and personality and interest, in every way possible. And I think that was what made SGR really strong, especially my class, but the years below as well. We're all very similar in that sense. So that surprised me for sure. But I think it was for the better ultimately. And I think it is just another arrow that points to the success of SGR in what makes it so special as a school. I've been very blessed to have had a great number of mentors in my life. Many of those mentors were people at St. John's Ravenscourt. I've talked a little bit about a couple teachers. There were also specific programs that really helped me along the way, I think. I think back to the debate and public speaking program run by Mr. John Robinson. I spent a lot of time with Mr. Robinson over the course of my 4 years at the school. I came into the school not really knowing how to do public speaking at all, having had very little to no experience, and certainly feeling intimidated by it. But by the end of my time working with him, not only did he become very close to me as a mentor and as someone I have a relationship with, but he really developed me as a person and as a student to do quite well with a skill set that I think is tremendously valuable and effective in the real world, not just in school or in a competitive sense, but in day-to-day communications with others. I was lucky to go to the World Championships in my final year of school. I was a finalist in persuasive speaking and parliamentary debating. And while I think that was an awesome experience, I think the tools that I now have after going through something like that are even more useful for me into the future and down the road. So if this is about my experience personally, I kind of wish I had done more. So if you talk to students or to teachers who had me in their classes, I was certainly spread very thin. I was doing a lot, whether that was on the varsity soccer team or track and field team or basketball teams, or if it was in public speaking and debating, or if it was on student council as head boy of the senior school, or if it was leading the youth and philanthropy committee, or doing a million other things. I was very involved. but I always kind of wish like there are so many parts of the school that did so much that really stood out to me as just fascinating, and I would have loved to have tried, but because of my personal limitations, I couldn't always do it. So for example, the major production was like the annual drama event that was put on by the school. And that was just incredible to watch every year. It was so much fun to go see. And we really, turned it into a really big event, which I loved to attend every year. But unfortunately, I just was never personally able to actually be a part of it myself. Likewise, the annual rock show is another similar kind of event based in the arts, in which people, set up a crazy performance in our gymnasium every year with, wonderful like lighting and sound effects and all this other stuff. It's like a real concert, which would have been super cool as well. And so there's stuff like that where, thinking back, once you're out of high school, you start to lose the chance to do things like that. It becomes far less common. Or once you start working or, have more responsibilities start to pop up in your life, you find yourself less able to explore in the same way. And so I wish, if I could have had a clone, my clone would have certainly participated in those kinds of things as well. But I have no regrets. Ultimately, I think I did as much as I possibly could at that school. I'm incredibly well off for having done those things. And yeah, I mean, it would have been nice to have tried a million other things too, but I'm very happy with what I did do. And I think it just speaks to the fact that there are many types of people out there. A lot of the people watching this video might resonate with the experience I'm describing. There might be many people who feel like they are not similar to me at all, or are different people or have different interests, and that's totally cool, because there's something for everyone at SGR. I like to do everything, but I couldn't do everything. And for anyone else watching this video, there's certainly something for you to do at that school. There's a sense of nostalgia for sure. Every time I'm back in Winnipeg, or happen to drive past SGR in the area, it always feels nice to see the school. I'm not at a point yet where I'm doing like fireside talks or anything as an alumni kind of student. But, that's certainly something that I would love to do down the road. I always find, the school to be a place that welcomes you back, and is always, there for you should you need it, and is always a place of home, I guess, in many ways. And so while the school is always changing and developing, that is something I don't think ever changes. And so looking back, I always have a sense of security in that SGR will be there. And that's certainly very reassuring to me. I think since leaving the school, I've come to take less things for granted, and really be appreciative of what that experience was and meant to me. When I talk to individuals in university who had different high school experiences, both in public and private schools, the kinds of things they were able to do in school, the kind of things they studied, the kind of feelings they have about their schools, very few of them have the same kind of bond with their high schools as I do with SGR. And I think only since leaving have I come to realize how unique that actually is. Your child will be able to find out who they really are and what they really like, because there are so many avenues that they can explore at that school. And I think it's equally as important to find out what you don't like as what you do like, and you'll be able to do that at the school as well. But you'll also be able to do so in a way that is always constructive to your development. And I think, there can be a lot of pressure on students sometimes. And, sometimes we can feel like we're in a funnel in which, everyone needs to pursue a certain path or take certain classes or do the right thing to end up, in the university they want to go to or the program they want to go to so that they can get the right kind of job that they want. And I don't really think that's a narrative that SGR pushes. I think it allows you to take the time to figure out what actually matters to you, and will help you understand what steps then need to be taken to pursue whatever your goals in life are. I think that's really, really tremendous about the school, and I don't think it's something that's replicated in all other institutions. I think the school will also provide you with a place to do a lot of things that aren't necessarily always school related. So you might be interested in a lot of different extracurriculars the school offers. I certainly was, and I certainly got involved. But I think the school cares a lot about its impact on the greater community. If you look at events that we put on, like the Terry Fox Run, that's something that every school kind of does each year, and yet we had that event on steroids. We just blew it out of the water in terms of making sure it was actually really big and impactful and did something for not only the students of our school, but everyone in Wildwood Park and in extension, the greater area of Winnipeg that we were in. Likewise, Kendra's Walk is another example of a phenomenal event put on by the school every year for a purpose that is not about the school, but is about others. And is about helping people who may not necessarily always be able to help themselves. I think that's really important. And lastly, the school will help you become the best person that you can be. I found in my 4 years, when I look back, while I've always been the same person fundamentally, there was a lot of change that happened in those 4 years and growth that took place for me in each particular year of schooling that I went through at that school. And it kind of culminated in grade 12 as head boy of senior school, where I was kind of leading the school and trying to give back as much of that experience as possible and pass as many of the lessons that I had learned forward to others. That is something that I did, but I think it's also something that many of the students at SGR will do for each other, and will elevate everyone together to the highest possible point that they can. So you'll go in one way, fantastic person that you are, and I think SGR will somehow find a way to get you even higher and make you even better as a person. And I'm not necessarily sure I could have done that somewhere else. Every family is different. Every family has their own personal circumstances, and will need to make that decision for themselves, which is, completely understandable and makes sense. Again, I wouldn't necessarily say that you should take my experience as completely reflective to what yours might look like at the school. But what I would say is that you might as well try. Like if you were on the fence, I don't think you'll regret going to SGR. And without a doubt, if you try it out and your student goes, the school will do everything it possibly can to make sure that you feel welcomed and that you have a place, and that there are things there that will inspire you to be the best student you possibly can be. So I wouldn't necessarily be afraid of anything like that, because the whole purpose of the school is to make sure students feel all of those things and feel well equipped to be the best version of themselves. And ultimately, if you don't feel that it is the right place for you, then that's okay, right? It's not going to be the right place for everyone, but that I think is the same as any other school in Winnipeg, in Canada, in the world. You might fit in some places, you might fit in others. So find out what works best for you. But SGR certainly is what was best for me at the time. I don't think any of my peers really have significant regrets about ever going to SGR. That's both with lifer students and those who came in grade 9 or grade 6 or any of the other entrance years. I think everyone who went there looks back fondly for the most part. and is thankful for the time that they had and almost wish they could have had more time there too. I would say everyone else is in the same boat. Nobody knows, what they're doing. No one really knows what's going on going into high school, for example, or junior school for your first day, or middle school. Can feel scary for sure. There's going to be a lot going on. You might feel overwhelmed. You might be, in a place that all of a sudden wants you in a uniform, where all of a sudden you're taking these like random beaver buses to school, where all of a sudden you're going into this like massive cafeteria and eating in Amber Hall, which will turn out to be, I think, a lot of fun. And you'll look back on that very fondly as well. I certainly do. But there's going to be a lot of firsts. And I think when you first start to experience those things, it might feel very foreign or very alien to you. But I would say just take it a day at a time. Embrace it, be excited, ask lots of questions, ask for help if you need it. Everyone there is there to help you. And really, don't let the years you have there pass you by, because they'll go by quickly. They certainly did for me. And I think those first few moments at the school will be the most profound and formative for you at the end of the day. So if you can be very mindful as you go through those moments, take them in and really try to process it as best you can, you'll look back one day and think, wow, what an awesome place to have been.
For more information about this school, you can visit their profile at ourkids.net.